Hello Radical Ones, hello fellow Dark Shadows fans. Thank you so much for checking out this second Dark Shadows video. This is a follow-up that focuses on the original Dark Shadows movie's sequel, Night of Dark Shadows from 1971. While the original plan was to have Barnabas return, that didn't happen. And this movie has a long history. In fact, at some points there was a restoration underway to try and somehow edit this film to be more like the original cut of the film. Story has it that 24 hours was given to Dan Curtis for him to trim out 35 minutes of the finished movie. Thus, the film went from approximately 120 minutes to about 94 minutes. So the movie does suffer in some regards. Those 35 minutes were found at some point, but they were found without audio. I remember being younger and reading about this from the Dark Shadows fan clubs online. So what I remember was surviving cast members were going to record the dialogue that was missing for a possible re-edit, and someone was going to be a sound-alike for Grayson Hall, who had unfortunately passed away many years prior. This never was completed as far as I know. Maybe some footage was shown at the Dark Shadows festivals, but I'm not entirely sure. This movie stars more Dark Shadows cast members, as well as some from the original movie, playing different characters, much like they would on the soap opera. This is a kind of sequel to the original movie. There's a passing line that says Elizabeth Stoddard had passed away, but it makes you wonder why David Collins didn't inherit Collinwood. He was alive at the end of the last movie, and the youngest Colin, Here we have Dark Shadows' favorite and heartthrob, David Selby, as Quentin Collins. Quentin was one of my favorite characters from the original soap opera, but this is not the same Quentin, even if the characters are the same name. We also get Kate Jackson in her first movie appearance, who, before becoming a Charlie's Angel, was actually a Dark Shadows cast member towards the end of the series run. Carlotta Drake is played by Grayson Hall. She's the new housekeeper at Collinwood, and there's a caretaker named Gerard. She welcomes the new couple, and we learn that Quentin inherited the house after Elizabeth died, and that he's a painter. So soon, we're introduced to the gorgeous painting of Angelique Collins, another popular, beloved character from the soap opera, who is one of the most fierce witches of all time, if I do say so myself. Quentin immediately is drawn to the painting of Angelique. Of course, strange things begin to happen, like when he's looking out of a window and sees a body hanging from a tree outside, only to see it disappear a moment later. And that night, the dreams begin. We see what turns out to be Quentin's ancestor killing a reverend who had murdered and hung his lover Angelique in a past life. There's also this shot that I believe is supposed to be the same night, but Quentin's clothes have changed colors, but he hears the sound of what to me is bricks being bricked up, and I believe his past life was being boarded up behind a wall of some kind. This was done in the original Dark Shadows soap opera as well at some point, I remember. A plot synopsis says he indeed was buried alive next to the corpse of Angelique, so they could be together forever. We then see Quentin going for a horseback ride, and he comes across a Collinwood cemetery where we see another flashback and another funeral in the rain. It turns out that the Collins can't throw a funeral without it downpouring, evidently. Also, this funeral, much like the one in the original movie, cast members from the soap opera can be seen in cameos here. What can I say? I'm a sucker for old graveyards like this. But it is very close to the original movie scene where Caroline is buried and we see the pallbearers bringing the coffin inside the mausoleum. The gentleman known as Gerard has a connection with Carlotta, and he knows what's going on with Angelique, as does the housekeeper. More characters are Caroline and Willie. Sorry, I mean Claire and Alex. And also living on the Collinwoods property in a cottage. They're two Gothic book co-writers, and they're here writing a new novel. I believe they will have lots and lots to write about after the following events. So Quentin starts painting, and he gets the feeling that he's been in this very room before, but it'd be impossible. So it turns out in the past, Charles Collins, who was Quentin's past life, and Angelique were having an affair. Angelique was married to Charles's brother, and Charles was married to Lara Collins. So we do get that cliche trope where someone might be losing their mind with the supernatural. Quentin's outside, he looks up to see what he believes is a young girl holding a doll, but when he goes to investigate inside Collinwood, it's only Carlotta, and she says she was the one in the window, not a little girl. More dreams for Quentin as he kind of sleepwalks at some point and tries to strangle Tracy. Alex goes for a bike ride on the Collins estate and sees the spirit of Angelique walking in the distance. He calls out to her, but she doesn't answer. I actually love the ambiance of this greenhouse that's barely hanging on. Alex goes in to follow what he believes he saw and is almost killed by the falling tiles from the ceiling. Outside, Tracy meets him, and she tells Alex what had happened last night with Quentin. Quicker than you might think, Carlotta tells Quentin at this point that they're both special, and both have memories of a previous life in which she loved Angelique, and she is the reincarnation of Sarah Castle, a little girl who had lived at Collinwood over 150 years ago, and that Quentin himself is the reincarnation of Charles Collins, also a painter. When they come to hang Angelique for witchcraft, she gives Carlotta a locket, telling her that as long as she has the locket, she would be alive for her. They hang Angelique literally outside of Collinwood in a tree. If anything, that is very efficient of them. Carlotta tells him that soon he will become Charles Collins, and that if he really loves Tracy, his wife, to leave as soon as he can. If he can actually leave. At this point, Alex calls Tracy before he and Claire leave for New York to make sure that she'll be okay while they're gone for a few days, as he wants to investigate something about a painter. She says things are going swell, of course, but that night, things go awry. There's various points in this movie where the music abruptly cuts and will shift to a scene, and you can tell that those 35 minutes that were cut in 24 hours truly affected the film in this way. And there's parts when scenes end or begin, and it seems that's not the way they were supposed to actually go. So Quentin goes up to the tower and Tracy follows him. But let me tell you, he ain't happy. She goes the next day to the tower, which Quentin has kept locked while he's away, and sees the painting that he's been working on. Tracy girl, your life is in danger. The picture is of himself holding what looks to be Tracy's lifeless body in his hands. That night, Quentin comes to a tearing, scared Tracy laying in bed, and he tells her it's okay. He knows she's been to the tower, and he's not mad. Is it really okay, Tracy? Really? He then begins to aggressively kiss her, to which she asks him to stop, and he tells her he will touch her whenever he wants to. Alex and Claire are talking about how Quentin looks exactly like the painting of Charles Collins, and he believes something's awry. But that night, the ghost of Angelique attacks him on the sofa, and there's this really awkward scene where Claire finds the ghost attacking him, but then it flashes and a lamp falls. It just looks very awkwardly cut. So Quentin is now fully possessed and thinks that Tracy is Lara Collins. He tries to drown her in a disused swimming pool on the estate. Lucky enough, Alex and Claire arrive in time to revive her, but Quentin, having no memory of these actions, refuses to believe this tale and tells Alex to take Tracy and go. So then we get a scene where Alex is almost driven off the road by Gerard when he's on the way to kill Tracy and Claire so that Angelique can be with Quentin. Well, I love Claire in this scene. Her character thinks so smart. She goes to a cabinet and grabs her handgun. And she shoots the assailant outside through the window. I swear it looked like his eye was shot out, but it turns out he's still alive. She and Tracy go outside to investigate, but when they come back in, he was waiting for them. At this point, Tracy is taken, but Quentin, coming to his senses for a moment after noticing scratches on his arm, he hears Tracy scream and hears punching and kicking into the steering wheel to honk the horn. Quentin and Gerard have a battle on a bridge that honestly I could really do without. There's a knife fight with these drum beats, and then he ends up falling to his death. Well, the foursome go back to Collinwood looking for the Phantom of the Opera. Oh, no. Actually, they're looking for Carlotta, who they believe has a connection to Angelique that they could end. Carlotta sees Angelique on the roof calling for her, and she jumps to her death. Just when you think things are gonna be happy and we're gonna have a wonderful ending for once, Quentin decides to go back to Collinwood. As they're moving, they're about to go start their new life after this horror. Quentin decides to stop because he forgot some art supplies. This was the dumbest situation possible because Quentin goes in and never comes out. Tracy is waiting in the car, honking the horn, and then goes in only to find Quentin sitting on a couch looking outside the window. She calls to him, he starts to limp. Quentin is now fully possessed, Charles is in control, and Angelique was reborn into flesh? ? Tracy screams, and we get a close-up of Quentin's face. It ends with this newspaper, typewriter-esque text, and it tells us both Alex and Claire were killed in a car accident last night, where witnesses reported seeing a ghostly fog filling the car as it veered off the road. Dark Shadows loves these dark endings. So while Night of Dark Shadows is not as cohesive or as good as the original movie, it does have beautifully shot moments. And hey, I can think of worse things than watching a 90-something minute movie, staring into dreamy David Selby's eyes, or the beautiful Kate Jackson in this Gothic tale. See you again, Radical Ones!